Hello, good afternoon, good morning, or maybe good evening to you, wherever you are joining us from around the world. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is David Bell. I'm our host today. I'm going to introduce you very shortly to Professor Alan Barrell, who is going to be, we're going to have some very exciting conversations. We're going to be talking about Show Me the Money. And for some of you, you're probably wondering where that's going to lead us, but lots of great conversations to have. But a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off with the main event. For those that are joining us, regardless of where you are, thank you very much. You may be watching this because you've registered to be here today. And if you have, you will have the luxury of getting some of the materials that we're going to share after the show as well. So we're going to be sharing some slides with you. The good news is we don't have lots of slides to show today. It's going to be a very interactive, fun, engaging conversation between myself and Professor Alan Barrell. You have the opportunity to pop your questions into the chat. If you wanted to ask us something, please put it in there. The more interaction we get, the more exciting it is for Alan and I as well, and the more material and the more conversations we can have. So any questions, even if it's just, hello, I'm tuning in from China, because I know we've got some Chinese students and fellow friends join us. Maybe you're tuning in from Latvia. Let us know where you are and what it is you're doing. Maybe you're sitting at home in your lounge. Maybe you're in your office. Maybe you're at the university. But wherever you're coming from, give a shout out and say hello so we can keep an eye on what's going. But do remember, the more questions, the more fun, the more interactive we can be. This session is being recorded, and for those that have registered, it will be automatically sent to you so you can join in and catch up of any of the bits that you've missed. Or, of course, maybe there's elements that you want to replay because you found it very useful, and some great takeaways, no doubt, will be shared with you this afternoon. So, hello. I'm just going to give a couple of shout outs before we do the introductions. Thank you very much, Elmar's joining us. Elmar's is very pivotal, actually, to the Latvian Cambridge Venture Camp. So hello to you, Elmars. Thank you for all your hard effort. Hello, Alistair. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got Dom Tyler. Hi, Dom, good friend of mine, and joining us in the UK. So thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. Kathy Chan, thank you very much for joining us all the way from Hong Kong. It does show you that we are reaching around the world already. So thank you for all of you tuning in. Now, the main reason we're here this afternoon is because I am blessed to have Professor Alan Barrell here, a good friend, someone I've been working with for many years now on various different projects where we've been delivering exciting content around enterprise and entrepreneurship, all around kind of management, communication. The list goes on. But today we're here to talk, well, not just about, but show me the money. So, Professor Alan Barrell, thank you very much as always. Again, a great friend, someone I admire. And the reason is I'm going to dig a little bit deeper because I want you to share a little bit of your story. But introduce yourself, Alan. For those that don't have the pleasure of already knowing you, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to date.
Well, thank you, David, for inviting me. And thank you all for being with us. It's a fantastic pleasure. It's a privilege for me. And I've already heard names of people I know who are joining us and some that I don't know. But as you can see, I'm quite ancient. I am actually 84 years old, but I'm a human being like you. And I want this to be an interactive discussion. I've got 8 grandchildren. I've got 4 kids. I've got a 3-year-old great-grandson who lives in Iceland. So I'm a family man, and I'm a very lucky man. I started my life actually in medicine. I was 6 years working in clinical laboratory medicine, mostly in the NHS, but in research. Then I moved into industry because I met this wonderful young lady, and I didn't think we could ever get married on the salary I was earning in the NHS. So I became a salesman in the healthcare industry, and I spent 20 years in the healthcare industry, climbed up the greasy pole, got into sales, marketing, general management, international management, went all around the world, lived in America, and became a chief executive of a large international company. Then I moved out of that into a tiny little company that was starting up and not really very far down the road, and I stayed with that for 6 years. And I had the experience then of taking a company into the public market and taking it public, and that company actually was a printing company, a printing equipment company. It wasn't a medical company. And we eventually took it public, and we had a wonderful public issue, 43 times oversubscribed, and it sold for over $1 billion cash. Long after I left it, I went and did other similar things. Then I got into, after many years working in the electronics industry, again as a chief executive, and then into investment. I went into venture capital, working with charities, and towards the latter part of my life, spent a lot of time in China, started a company there, started companies all over the world, actually. And most recently, having done a lot of work with large companies, I work pretty well only with very small ones that are starting up. So what I'd like to feel I can do today is not to show you how clever I am, because I'm no more clever than you are, but I've got experience, and I've been part of the NHS. I've been part of a large company, so I know how they work. Then I've been part of an investment company. I've been a business angel. I've actually invested my own money in companies, and then I've been part of venture capital. So I've had really a wonderful range of experiences. So I've seen lots of angles of money and how it's used in businesses, and why you need it, and where it comes from, and how to raise it. And being an investor, I've also got a very, very good idea of why people invest and what they expect to see from people who want money. And I bet that many of you are either trying to raise money, or you'll be thinking of raising it at some time in the future, especially if you're working with small companies. So I hope I'll be able to help you to understand a little bit more what it is you might do to be successful in your fundraising. But I've had a fantastic life. I've done all kinds of things around the world. I've worked with charities, and I'm working at the moment with some wonderful companies. I'm working with David on companies emerging from the university and starting up. And really, what I've got, I'm very, very pleased to share with you. And I really would like this to be interactive. After the event, there's some material we can send you. We're not going to do big presentations here. We're going to have, David's going to interrogate me. I know he is, and he's very good at that. He's going to be very challenging, which is what I want to happen. But after it all, we've got stuff to send you. I've written a book about all this, Show Me the Money, how to raise the cash to get your business off the ground. So it is still available on Kindle. But anyway, let me say, leave it there, David, and let's get on with the proper discussion. So thank you all for being with us. Let's go on.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alan, and thank you for the introduction. I think it's key that people know who you are. 84 years old, not to repeat it, but you look so well for your young age, Alan, and you do so much, and you're still so supportive and helpful of those that are starting their journey or on their journey to success. Obviously, we're talking a little bit about success, very subjective. But you know, the Show Me the Money book, which we're going to dive into in a little bit as well, and talk a little bit about some of the content in there. And as we said, we want this to be interactive. So if you've got questions for myself or Alan, or just maybe a generic question that maybe others can answer, do put it in the chats. We'll do our best to keep an eye on that and to pick up any information that's coming from there, and see if we can answer many questions as well. I will just say, Sarah Brockwell's put hello from sunny Essex. Sarah, I don't know what part of Essex you're in, but it's not sunny outside my window. But never mind. I'm sure it's sunny somewhere in the world. So, Alan, you know, I met you probably well over a decade ago now, maybe slightly longer than that, and we've done various things together. One of the things that I do want to mention is that, yes, you know, you're very experienced, as I just mentioned, 84 years old in your own words. But I remember one of the times that I brought you onto one of our Chatbox shows, me and my co-founder, Nick Luby, which you know very well. And the reason I mention this is because Dom Tyler is here, and his daughter, Maya, and yourself joined us on one of our chat shows, and it was all about entrepreneurship. And we had Dom's daughter, who was 13 years old, who was just experiencing her first steps of starting a business at 13. And then at that time, Alan, I think he was probably just about to turn 80. And that was a fantastic show, still available for people to watch. But my question to you would be, and we will talk about raising money, when is the right age? Is there a right age to become an entrepreneur and to start your own business? Or is it, you know, you can start it later on in life, or you should be starting it as early as possible? What's your theory around that?
I think it's an absolutely brilliant question, and I don't think there is any particular age. And I'm going to confess to you all that I wasn't entrepreneurial for a large part of my life, because when you work for a company which employs 50,000 people, and you're a cog in the wheel, and I became a bigger cog, but even when you're a big cog, if you're not the biggest cog, there's still a different atmosphere that surrounds you when you're working in a large company. You can be entrepreneurial, but it's not so easy. And I didn't really become entrepreneurial, I guess, until, I must have been approaching 60. And I became really, really imaginative and entrepreneurial because I'd thrown off, the ties of corporate life. Not to say that corporate life is bad. I learned a lot in it. But I'd say one other thing about entrepreneurship at this stage, David, that for me, entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking is not really just about starting companies. It's not really at all about only starting companies and making money. The entrepreneurial mindset is something that we all need to aim at. Because if I'm a researcher and I want money for my research, I've got to be imaginative and entrepreneurial. And whatever we want to do to change things positively, which is what most people want to do in life, whether they're in business or whether they're in research or whether they're in professional services. Entrepreneurial thinking is important. And I'll just give you a quotation that you know very well because you hear me say it all the time. George Bernard Shaw, the great writer, was in his house one day with a young man who was asking him a load of stupid questions. And he said to this young man, "Shut up, young man." He said, "You look at me and you look at things and you ask why. But I dream of things that never were and ask why not." So when people ask me, what's the definition of an entrepreneur? I say it's the guy that looks at things and always says, why not? And, I don't really find it easy to work with yes, but people. People who say, "Oh, yes, but that might never work." So entrepreneurship for me is a way of thinking. It's a way of life. And so I didn't really get into it in the big way that I'm into it now until I'd sort of done my thing in corporate life and followed all the rules, working for an American company. Most of the orders come from over the sea. In those days, they did. So you can become an entrepreneur, as that young lady, Dom's daughter, did early in life. I mean, I've got 8 grandchildren. Some of them are entrepreneurs, and one of them's, 15, and he's an entrepreneur. So no, there's no age. Open your mind to possibilities and dream of things that never were, and ask why not. Then I think you are becoming entrepreneurial.
Yeah, amazing. This is one of the slides that is in the deck that we will share afterwards. I said we're not going to be doing death by PowerPoint here today, but I want to put this one up because I know one of the things you talk about a lot, Alan, is imagination. And I think this is let me just clear off the borders here. But I think this is a fantastic slide here, all around imagination. Just talk about this a little bit more because I think imagination, I never really thought about it until you shared this. And I was in the room when you first spoke about this. This is a lot, for me, it changes the way we look at life.
Yeah, this is the other quotation I use more than any other. I was working all day on Monday with 80 Chinese undergraduates, and this is one of the things I begin telling people when we talk about anything. I was talking to them about how the Cambridge ecosystem has grown because of entrepreneurial activity. And Einstein said this very simple but absolutely wonderful set of words. And in China, where the education system is really rather focused on filling people's heads with knowledge, this is a very important message for them. He didn't say, Einstein, knowledge is unimportant. He said imagination is more important, because what can we do with knowledge if we don't have imagination? And imagination is the forerunner, of course, of innovation. And creativity doesn't go anywhere on its own. A creative idea in my head doesn't move forward. But with imagination and innovation, creativity can become something wonderful and new. It can become, for example, a new company. And, I'm going to give you one more quote, because I'm not a Greek scholar, but Aristotle said something very wonderful too. He said, education should be more about igniting the flame than filling the vessel. In other words, you can jam your head full of stuff, but if you haven't got imagination and you haven't got inspiration and you haven't got motivation, you might not do anything with all that wonderful knowledge.
Mm. Yeah, and I love the quotes, and I love the way you remember all of these quotes. Obviously, you share them; they are motivating. They do inspire, absolutely. And one of the things I want to kind of have a conversation with you about is, yes, you've got the book here, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book. Show Me the Money, a book that has had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears poured into it. The recipe to success is kind of ingrained in here as well. But do businesses, when they start up, and I get there's lots of different types of businesses out there, industry sectors, whether it's a service industry, a product industry, whether it's local, regional, national, global, do they need money to start, or could a business start just by, hard work? What's your kind of opinion on that? Do we need money? Is it a requirement to get a business off the ground?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And there's a very wonderful entrepreneur in Cambridge, Herman Hauser, who started Acorn Computers and Amadeus Capital Partners. And his philosophy about starting companies, and he started about 130 of them, was keep them short of money. Don't give them money, keep them short of money and keep them short of resources in the early days and let them work hard to make their way. Of course, that's a quite extreme statement. And of course, a business needs resources, and it does need money. And, one of the interesting things when you teach around the world, as I have, is you teach a lot of very clever young people. And I've taught a lot of MBA students, masters in business administration, some of them already in business. And when I ask them, these large groups of people, what's the best source of money for a business? They all begin by saying something like business angels or venture capital or banks. And very rarely do I get a first answer from an audience that says customers. Because in my experience of all the businesses I've started, the best source of money that doesn't ask for any equity, doesn't dilute your ownership in the business, are customers. And the best companies that I've seen working very, very fast and very hard are those that have been able to create revenue very, very quickly. And I'll give you an example. I joined a company called Domino Printing Sciences. That was the one that eventually sold for over $1 billion, and it did a 43 times public issue, 43 times subscribed. And in the early days, it struggled and it made losses. But then it got the right product into the right markets, and it absolutely was a tsunami of success. And when we went public, we had a tremendous record. Our profit was about 28% of sales, and we were cash positive at the time that we went to the public market. And we didn't really need the money then, but because we were so successful, we actually had a 43 times oversubscribed issue. So we offered for sale 6 million shares, and the people that wanted them all around the world were actually 43 times more than the shares that we had. And we earned £485,000 on the overnight interest, because when you take a company public, people have to put their money up front and it goes into an escrow account. And we had all that money in the bank account, but we could only sell those 6 million shares that were offered, and all the other money had to go back. So, customers, I would always say that really think hard and fast when you're starting a business about how quickly you can become cash positive, because it makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's really good. That whole your customers. This is a kind of scenario: sell before you build, or sell, get your customers buying the product or service before maybe you actually physically manufacture it. I know Dropbox, they're a global organization for cloud storage. One of the things they did very smartly is that they actually sold, onboarded their customers before they even built the cloud storage platform. And once they got 150,000 subscribers signed up, committed, they then went, right, well, we've got a minimal viable product here, but now we better make this really work because we've got people that have handed across their hard-earned money. So they went off to physically make the application functional. And then they launched it. And of course, they were cash positive prior to actually launching their product. And I think that's quite a smart move. It doesn't work for everything, I'm sure, but where it can, why wouldn't you leverage customer money to get the engagement?
Yes, I mean, we have to be balanced in what we say because I'm a life scientist, and a lot of my work has been in the life science area, where it takes perhaps 10 or 15 years to get a very scientifically based company in pharmaceuticals or healthcare off the ground. And there you do need a lot of money. And that's a different kind of startup where you need to raise big money and more big money and more big money. You might have to raise 20 or 30 million over time. But that is a particular kind of business. And so I suppose the other thing that I would have to remind us all of is that the business model is a very important part of what we express and develop when we build a company. And having a clear idea of what your business model is absolutely essential in order that you know how you might raise money one way or another for it. And that's not something that people are always really very careful about, or entrepreneurs may be very good about without help and advice. The business model. What's the purpose of the business? What's it for? I mean, let's not forget, an idea is not an invention is not a product, and a product is not a company. So young people starting out on the pathway need to think about those questions and need to find answers for them, and then have to be able to express to the persons from whom they want money, be it equity money or non-equity money, what the business is and why anyone should put even a penny into it.
So let's kind of delve into some of the information that comes out of Show Me the Money. First question is, why did you co-write this book along with your colleagues David Gill and Martin Rigby? What was the reasoning behind this? Was it to give away kind of all those hints, tips, and ideas for people to raise finance and to get their business off the ground or to take it to the next stage? Was it just because you had that knowledge and you felt you had to share it? What was the reasoning behind the book? And
well, David Gill was running an innovation centre, and Martin Rigby is a venture capitalist. Those were the co-authors of my book. And we'd all been involved for some time, me towards the latter part of my career, helping companies, particularly Cambridge-based companies, but companies all over the world, get started and find money and grow. So we had developed a lot of, let's call them educational programs and development programs. And we had sort of photocopied stuff and stuff in manuals and so on and so forth. But as we did more and more of this work, we started to run what you might call venture workshops, very special courses in helping young people and old people to raise money. And what we thought was, well, we keep on regenerating all these manuals and things. And we've now got some very, very good information together, and we've developed some great processes that help people learn. So why not put it into a book? And that will help people. They can take it away. We can only spend a limited amount of time with them. They can study the detail when they're not with us. And that's how the book emerged. And it sold all over the world. It was translated into Chinese, by the way. The Chinese version is still available, a hard copy. The hard copy issue's gone in Europe, but it's still available on Kindle. That's why we did it. It was a really helpful way for us to do the work that we were doing. Not always paid work, by the way. You know, we are crazy, some of us. We spend a lot of time mentoring and coaching, as you know, not because we get paid, because we find wonderful people who we know can start great companies and we want to help them. So that's how the book came about. And the publishers were very happy. And over the years, I mean, if we'd have a course for 50 people from China, we could let them all have a copy of the book to take away, because you can only spend a short amount of time in classrooms and so on, and people need something to study in greater depth.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the things that you're super keen on, like myself, is relationships, because relationships open so many doors. That connection that you build, people. The saying is, "People buy people," and it's so true. You know, connecting with other people, building strong relationships, building that rapport, giving something back. There's a little bit kind of what I call, you know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. No, you know, as you say, we don't do it for the money. We do it because it's a feel good factor and helps others on their journey. And hopefully, maybe when we get a little bit stuck, someone can assist or help us as well. But you have this really, you coined the word, Alan. So I'm going to let you, but about connectivity, connectricity, and
Yeah.
about how it connects us and the power of connections. Talk a little bit more about this kind of relationship piece, because I think it's such an important thing in life and in business.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because people ask me very, very regularly, tell me what's the real big difference that Cambridge has had to do the wonderful things it's done with 6,000 knowledge-based companies, a great ecosystem, all that entrepreneurship. What's the real secret? And my answer is, well, we all know there's technology and science and engineering here, and that exists in other places too. And that's important. And there is money here, and that's important. But the big difference in Cambridge is the way people have grown, not only to work together, but to relate together and to connect. Yes, I think I did invent the word connectricity. Connectivity is important. Connectedness is important. But connectricity is connectedness with energy. And you know, the difference between a network, which you can belong to, you can belong to it sitting on your rear end and do nothing, and an ecosystem is activity. So for me, an ecosystem is very, very active. Therefore, the relationships between people lead to them working together. So the connectivity leads to connectricity, and a network becomes an active ecosystem. And, you know, we say here in Cambridge to young entrepreneurs, if you really work hard, the answer to your question that you may find difficult to get answered in how to grow your business may never be more than 2 phone calls away. So connectedness and connectivity are really, really crucial. And let's not forget that in 1991, a man called Tim Berners-Lee gave us the internet, and digital communication became very, very popular. And worldwide now, the digital communication processes are how we can achieve connectivity with a touch of a button from one side of the world to the other. So I say thank you very much, Tim Berners-Lee. You have helped us connect, and connectricity is something that is essential. And I talk a lot and think a lot about what I call relational behavior. You know, there are people in life who don't communicate very well. There are a relatively small number of people in life who really, really do communicate very, very actively. And once they know something that might help someone else, they can't stop communicating. And you know, I'm like that, David. You say you get stuff from me that you haven't asked for, you know, because I think, hey, David might be able to do something with that. So I think that the whole business of relationships, and this is very, very important for fundraising, how we think about other people. Because if I'm an entrepreneur, I may think I've got something that's going to change the world. I'm full of my ideas. I can be full of bullshit. But if I'm meeting investors, whether they be grant givers or whether they be equity investors, I've got to start to think about what's in their mind. What is it they want? What is it that will interest them? Why will they be motivated to give me money? Not just because I give them a whole load of wonderful talk and a fantastic PowerPoint presentation that might bore the pants off them, by the way, if it's too long. So I think the issue of relationships and how people think of each other and how they really spend time before they have a meeting, considering what will really interest this person I'm going to meet, and think it through and find out what the audience is. You know, when I was in venture capital, people would come through my door. They hadn't even bothered to look up my profile to find out what my interests were. Well, that's no good, is it? You really got to find out um, what the audience is interested in if you want to persuade them. And it may be something you hadn't thought of. You're full of your own ideas. Of course you are. Your head's full of wonderful things that you're going to do to change the world. You've got this company that has never been seen before. So you're full of all that, but you've got to spend a lot more time thinking about how other people will view that. So relationships and communication, absolutely vital.
Yeah. And do you think, again, earlier on, you mentioned that you've been an investor and involved in venture capitalists. And I know you've got a great network where you can steer and connect people and stuff like that. But if someone come along with a fantastic idea, okay, let's just say it is a cutting edge technology or whatever it might be, and they come along and they pitch it to these, angel investors or venture capitalist group, but they don't come across, they're not liked for whatever reason. I don't mean necessarily personality, but they don't connect in one way, shape, or form because they haven't had the opportunity to build a relationship, do that research, understand their audience. Would they get the investment? Would the investors go, do you know what, I can look past the individual, I'll invest in the idea? Or do you think most investors go, I've got to like the person, trust the person that I'm investing into? So is the person the most important part, or is it the product or service? Or is it a mixture?
Again, it's a very important question. I don't think it's a question of liking at all. It's not liking. Um, it's more understanding and trusting and believing in. Um, so I think that if someone comes in and gives a talk about a whole load of technological jargon, they may well not get a proper hearing, or they may get sent away to think again. And I have to tell you that I've worked with people who are still my friends for years, who were techie in companies, very techie, PhDs, who never found it possible to communicate with investors appropriately. They were, first of all too techie, and they didn't learn, they couldn't somehow find presentational skills to match the value of what they had. And so they never really crossed the barrier where the investors' interest. I won't mention names, but this was a software company that was in bioscience, bioinformatics. And it was very, very wonderful bioinformatics software. But investors, for those of you that may not be aware, generally equity investors don't invest in consulting companies much. And this was a consulting company to begin with. And it needed to turn itself into a software as a service company with a great potential for scale up. And the founder, who was a brilliant man, never really grasped that and never found a way. The company did progress, but eventually it didn't survive. And that's just the kind of example. So if it's all techie, you may not get anywhere. But if you haven't really bothered to understand what the investors are looking for, and there's no excuse for that, because I work a lot with early stage young people, as you know, and I help them to find out what are the criteria of the investor. So there's no good talking to a business angel about bioscience if all he's interested in is fintech. So you've got to do your research and find out in where does the investor or the grant fund correspond to my product and my interest. And then you have to work on that and find the way to present what you've got in the language that they will understand relative to their interests and their criteria. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time and patience to understand these things. And that's something that I spend, as you know, so much time on, trying to enable people to understand what those things mean and how to deal with them.
Yeah. So there might be people here today that have got a business, starting a business, and looking potentially to get some investments. Where do they start? You know, look, there's different levels of investment. You mentioned earlier, obviously going to potentially leveraging your clients, your customers to raise capital to put into the business. I use the 4 Fs, and I'm just going to share it with our audience. So the 4 Fs for me, where do we start? We need to raise capital. Founders. So the business owners, the people that started the company, what have we got to put into the business to get it off the ground? But that might not be enough money. So then, could we reach out to family? Could family be our investors? So that's our second F. Then I have friends. What could we raise through maybe friends investing? And of course, that's all quite loose, because the thing with family and friends, we don't want to upset them, but hopefully they might bear to put some money into the business, and the interest rate will be nil or super low, or they might just lend you the money, in return that you remember them when you become super successful, whatever success looks like. And then the last one I have as the 4 Fs is the fools. Anyone else that will give you the money to get you where you want to go. But I use it loosely, because those that need to raise serious money, how can they do it? It's a question that probably lots of people ask. Where do I find these investors? Where do I walk into a room? Do I make a phone call? Yes, there's Dragon's Den and things like that. But realistically, in the real world, if I've got an idea that's already maybe trading or very early startup or been trading for many years, and I need to raise capital, who do I turn to? Who do I speak to? How do I raise that money? Where's the best place to start?
Yeah, it's an absolutely critical question, of course, David. Let me just say something about family. I'm not suggesting family is not a place to look, and certainly there are fools around who will give you money, whatever is in their mind. But be careful with family, because family can be problematic. And a lot of, not a lot, but a number of entrepreneurs that I've worked with have got involved with family money, and then things have happened, like Auntie Rose, who gave them money and put it in the business and got an equity share, got dementia. And it was a problem. It becomes a problem. So if you do use family for substantial finance, do it properly, do it in the proper way, with legal agreements and so on and so forth, because there can be problems that arise that even destroy business if you're not careful. But otherwise, I suppose, and this is a dangerous question for me, because the answer that I'm going to give you could result in a flood of requests for more help and advice, because it's very helpful, if you're not used to finance, to find somebody who can advise you, who does know how the financial situation works. Now, you can go to accounting firms and law firms. I mean, there's some good law firms in Cambridge, and I was online recently to a young lady who you will know, Megana, who's founded a company out of ARU, David. And I introduced her to a very good man I know, a partner at Taylor Vinters, the law firm. And he gave them, I was online with them, a free hour advice on how to start a company and where to start looking for the money and stuff like that. So you can find advice. And there are people like me who have been business angels and are still in some ways business angels, who become mentors or advisors or introducers. And just to say a little bit more about that, people like me can only do so much. But what I can do for some people, in fact, Dom and I have just had a discussion about his needs. Dom is online here for money. And what I can do for Dom, I can either introduce him or give him connections, having looked at his plan and believed in it and said, hey, this is a good guy, this is a good plan. I can connect him with sources of money. It might be, in his case, it's equity money. It's business angels that I know that are particularly interested in his kind of business. So find someone, have a really good search round, ask questions. You can talk to people in your local university or your accountants or your law firms. They will give you some advice, but if you're really serious and you've got something really worthwhile, find a seasoned mentor or investor, someone who has networks that can help you and will give you time. And you may have to be resourceful to find that person, but they are out there somewhere. So get that kind of advice. Have someone look at your plan. And if you can, find someone that has been in investing, that has run companies, that has been in big business and small business like me, to look at your presentation material and to listen to what you've got and to advise you on how to put it into the right shape in order that you have become, let's use this terminology, investment ready.
Yeah. Wise words there. A couple of things I want to pick up on. Mentors and advisors. So again, maybe a young startup business, aspirations to develop and grow. Do these businesses need advisors? Do they need mentors, or is it just a nice tick box? I have an opinion on this, but I'd like to hear your opinion because I think we'll be singing from a very similar hymn sheet anyway.
Say it again, David. Is it you're talking about big businesses?
Well, no, any business, bringing on a mentor. So you and I work with, obviously, we'll talk about Latvia, Cambridge Venture Capital in a minute, but we work with Latvia, we work with ARU through Cambridge, Chelmsford and Peterborough. And, we offer mentorship, to help provide some guidance, some steering opportunities, connections, open the doors and give them the belief in themselves that they can do this. Should every business, every startup or even more established business have a mentor, someone that can look after them, be there as a sounding board, give advice? Do you think it's a good thing to have mentorship and an advisor?
I do. I think it's a very good thing. And indeed, a mentor is not a coach in the way that someone's teaching you how to understand a P&L or a balance sheet. That's good education, that's coaching. The mentor should be someone who you really trust and know, who can be your personal guide and mentor, who can tell you the hard thing that I had to tell the young man I mentioned who wasn't able to communicate. Really had to work hard with him because it was upsetting for him. I'm not suggesting he was anything other than a brilliant young man. So the mentor is one to whom you can go when you're really struggling. And I spent a lot of time trying to enable, in some organizations, chief executives to really work well with chairman and other members of the team because they didn't always get on well. And a mentor that is 2 steps away and can be brought in with a neutral view of things is very, very helpful. Someone sympathetic to your personality and your personal development too. So mentoring, I think, is absolutely important if you are at a startup kind of situation and you're really looking for good help and good advice. And the mentor can really handle those difficult things and difficult times. And what I say about mentors is they should be available when issues need dealing with. You don't need to see them every week. You don't need to see them necessarily every month, but you need to keep them informed. So you need to keep them informed about how the business is going. And then when you really, really need them, that's when they are the most useful. Yeah, mentors are great.
Yeah. And then a mentor and an advisor, because people sometimes, we hear all these words bounced around: coach, mentor, advisor, consultant. Some of them will lump that all together. Oh, it's the same person that you've just, explained. The coach is there to help you maybe work on, P&L, to coach you to become more, educated in yourself. If you've got a business, a startup business, having an advisor on the board adds credibility or not.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Let's just talk a little bit more about that because you're raising the issue. Let's talk about this whole area of mentoring and advising and so on. Let me give you an example of a company. I was sitting in the Judge Business School one day, and a young man came and had coffee with me, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm a PhD. I'm going to start a company. It's going to be a healthcare company, and I'm going back to my home city, which is in France, actually, to start this business up." And I said, "Well, why are you going back there? Because, Cambridge is not a bad place, is it?" And he had to think about it. And to cut a long story short, they started a business, three of them, in Cambridge towards the end of their studies. And they asked me to advise them. And I was pleased to. So I became an unpaid advisor. Now, I have a lot of years of experience. I'm not boasting about it. But they were able to put on their presentation when they started to raise money that they had me, and they could have my profile on their website as an advisor. And that was helpful because a lot of people knew me. I was a Cambridge Angel. So, immediately they've got somebody who people say, "Oh, he's working with them. They can't be rubbish, at least." Then as the business started to grow, they said, "We need a bit more of your time if you got it." And I became the chairman. I became a director and the chairman. And I didn't get paid initially because they didn't have any money. But once they got money, I started to get paid a bit. And I was the chairman as the company grew. The company employed more and more people. And we brought in another non-executive director who, like me, was mature. So they had their executive team. They had a chairman who could also be a mentor to the CEO. I could be a mentor to the CEO because I wasn't coaching him. And he had a great finance director who was teaching him all about how to run the business financially. And we had another non-executive director who was good at human resources. So the organization emerges with advisors who sometimes become chairman and sometimes become investors, but not always. And very well qualified advisors who are networked well, and particularly if you're raising money, are networked in the investment community, are very, very helpful. So that's the way organizations can develop. And then you have your professional services people, like the lawyers and the accountants, and you pay them for what they do, their fees.
Yeah, excellent. Very shortly, I'm going to bring another guest on to join us who you know very, very well. And we're going to learn a little bit more because I think it's very important we just put bits of the jigsaw in the right places. For those that are joining us from Latvia, you'll be familiar with the Latvian Cambridge Venture Camp, and those that join us from Cambridge might be aware of that as well if you're wearing the ARU hat. But Alan, just join the dots for those that have no idea what LatCam Venture Camp's all about. Just tell us the reason why it's taken place and why we're here today, and then we're going to bring our special guest on to join us and say a hello as well.
Yeah, oh, thank you for that. Well, I've been working for many years with overseas students and entrepreneurs that we bring here. And I've been working for 30 years in China. And I've been bringing Chinese undergraduates and entrepreneurs for short courses here for many years. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but we started to do similar work with groups from Finland and in Finland. And I somehow met this guy, I think I met him in Finland, called Elmars Baltins, who was a Latvian. And he came to Cambridge and he came to one of my Chinese workshops where I was talking about show me the money and raising the money and starting a business. And he said, "Could we do this for Latvia?" And I said, "Why not?" So we went to Latvia and we got great support from the Stockholm School of Economics and the universities in Latvia. And Elmars was already running Connect Latvia, which is a connecting organization. And I don't know exactly how he did it, but we started to put the word out that we'd be in Riga looking for entrepreneurs who might be interested in some mentoring and might actually be interested, if they were good enough, in coming to Cambridge so we could expose them to the kind of program we've been doing with the Chinese. And that was 10 years ago. This is the 10th year of the Latvian Venture Camp. So we had the first session in the Riga, the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. And I can remember the first lady that came through the door. Elmaz will tell you her name because I can never remember it. But she was an architect, a graduate architect with an MBA. And she came and sat with me and she said, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to start a virtual reality company that's all about architecture, virtual reality and architecture. And she was our first candidate. She went through the program. She started the company. Her company is now world famous, actually. She's made a fantastic job of forming her company. Now, I'm not saying that because of anything I did in particular, but that's how the venture camp happened. And then year by year, we've had more people interested, and we've always had to manage the numbers that could come to Cambridge. But we've had a number of other companies. We had a company, Weedbot, that designed a product that can tell the difference between weeds and crops and works on the farm. And we've had people like the guy running that come on the venture camp, and we've helped them by introducing them to investors here in the UK. And it's all emerged, and it's become a very, very exciting project, as you know, because you're part of it, David, and you've been very much part of it for the last few years. And what's happened recently is we've said, well, why don't we do some things in between? We can't just have a once a year effort, go to Latvia, find the entrepreneurs, bring them back to Cambridge. Incidentally, if anyone's really interested, we can send you a paper we've published about how this has all happened. We have published a sort of semi-academic paper about the Latvia Venture Camp Cambridge activity. And Elmaz, are you there, Elmaz? Is Elmaz online?
He will be listening, and he can feed into the chat, but he can't actually.
Yeah, well, he can feed you the name of the lady so they can see it. If he feeds it in, it'll come on the screen. Put the lady's name on, the one I'm talking about, the great lady, Elmaz. You know I'm talking about, who started that virtual reality company. Anyway, sometime, don't delay our discussion for it, but she was real.
Put that into chat almost. Now, let's bring Danis in, who's been sitting patiently, waiting, listening to everything unfolding over the last 45 minutes plus. Good evening, Danis. Obviously on the road, broadcasting live from your car.
I counted that I'll be later switched in, so 10 minutes later probably will be a more comfortable situation, but it's fine. I hope that you hear me well.
We can hear you well. Please drive safely while you're listening and talking to us. Danis, all the way from Latvia, joining us. Just tell us a little bit about your role and what it is that you do supporting the students and the program.
Okay, so first a couple of words of myself. So I'm by education I'm lawyer, but the life has so managed that I worked in financial field of almost all of my practical job. So first starting in a bank, working with corporates, looking how to finance, by the way, different business activities. Then I switched to the company where one of the biggest manufacturing companies in Latvia was CFO for 8 years. In that quality, I was turned the tables and sitting and talking with investors. So helping to attract money to my company. Now I'm more like a private advisor, so advising companies on financial fields, how to get money. So I make some investments by myself, organizing money for my business activities, couple of them successful, couple of them unsuccessful. So, I invested my own money in several businesses, again, some of them successful and some of them unsuccessful. And my principal activity here, where I'm member of board of Connect. So, and in such quality, I am taking my part of organizing Latvia Cambridge Venture Camp, Latvian part of that, mentoring in this venture camp, but also chairing evaluation committee, which is also known under the name Barrell, where we are evaluating the presentations of contestants. which at least in part has to include their project, how to show their own money. So yes, that's my activity here.
Yeah, David, can I step in here and say something? Because not everyone will know this, but the Latvians present will know something about it. Danish does a fantastic job with Elmars in making sure that the Latvia Cambridge Venture Camp has a manageable budget. We wouldn't survive, and we survive on a shoestring. We don't do this with large bank accounts. We do it really on a shoestring. And Danis he's really the treasurer as much as anything else of the Cambridge Latvia Venture Camp. And they do a great job. He works with Elmars very closely. And it's fantastic to have him as a member of the team. It's amazing. So thank you, Danis.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. And yes, but you touch very important point. Actually, Connect Latvia Cambridge Venture Camp. It's a permanent campaign of fundraising. So because money givers come and go, so we started the Connect project with one bank and two universities: Stockholm School of Economics and Latvia Technical University. Then we changed the banks. Then we very recently changed some universities. So it's permanent process of fundraising. So all the possibilities has to be explored, and all the possibilities has to be used whatever you find.
Thank you there, Danis. I'm going to let you focus on going forwards. So we're kind of really going to wrap up, Alan. I popped a link into the chat that you'll be able to see, which will give you access to the actual presentation slides that we do have, which normally, Alan, if we were in a kind of a more classroom type environment, we would go through slides, but we like our stuff to be conversational and interactive rather than slides when we're doing these kind of shows. So if you are interested in downloading the slides that would accompany the conversation, the link is in the chat for you to do so. Download them, have a look through them, and you can by all means reach out to Alan.
Yeah, David, are you going to make available the octopus slides as well?
I will find those and put those in there, but the Show Me the Money ones are the ones I've loaded up for everyone to access.
That's good. Show Me the Money ones are all really a sort of summary of the book and what we've been talking about. But there's a very good presentation by a venture company called Octopus that is really all about how not to get money. In other words, all the things you can do wrong. It's just a PDF file that you can look at. And it's all very, very good and very common sense. And I recommend it to all entrepreneurs as well as my stuff.
Yeah. So we'll get that loaded into the chat in a moment as well for you. But we are coming up to the top of the hour. And these sessions are scheduled for 1 hour. So, Alan, I'm going to hand over to you to kind of wrap us up and send us out. Give us any final thoughts about Show Me the Money. Any final things that if we're looking for investment or we're trying to raise capital to get our business off the ground or to make it succeed and become super successful. Last few words from you, Alan. What should we do?
The first thing really is, I go back to where we began. You must have a very clear business model. You must have a simple business plan. All members of the team should be able to make what we call an elevator pitch presentation about the company. The elevator pitch, for those of you that don't know what it is if you've got in an elevator going up 20 floors, you've got 20 floors of time to tell an investor that you didn't know was in the lift and you find in the corner all about your business and do enough during that elevator pitch to get a meeting. Have a clear business plan. Take advice on what kind of investment is best for your business. Try and do without outside money. Customers are very helpful. But take advice on sources of money. There's a lot of non-equity money out there. And David will remember a young lady called Maria Jensen, who is a lady whose company I helped start in Finland. And she has a company which is all about veterinary healthcare, which she started 5 or 6 years ago. And she has raised 2.2 million in the UK from Innovate UK, which is it's government money that is grant money. It's not easy to get. You have to know how to get it and you have to report on it, but it doesn't dilute your ownership. If, on the other hand, you're looking for equity investments, take advice and research the people to whom you're going to approach very, very carefully and find the right ones, find the right people, research who they are, research the individual partners. And if it's business angels, research the business angel people, not just the group, but the individuals. Find out what interests them and prepare and get your meetings well set up. And be sure that you focus your presentation on their interests and not just what you've got that's very, very great. Those are really the principles that I keep repeating when I'm working with my entrepreneurs, because those are the critical things you have to get right if you're going to raise money. And be positively aggressive. You be assertive. You've got to show confidence, because at the end of the day, even if you've got a good plan and you've got a good business model, they're going to be looking at you and they're going to be looking at the team. And by the way, when you raise money with equity investors, don't try and get the whole team to present. 1 or 2 of you should do a very sharp presentation. Normally with equity investors, the first challenge is to get the meeting. You've got to get the meeting. So you've got to do early work to persuade them to meet you. The first meeting will probably not be more than an hour. And before you have that first meeting, ask them what they want. Ask them what kind of information they want. Some of them don't like PowerPoint. Ask them, would you like a presentation or would you like an informal meeting? And many will say, we want to meet you, and they want to meet the team. So those are really the principles that I've found have been very successful. And those are the ways that I would always want to work with entrepreneurs when I've been an investor. I never wanted to see a business plan before I met the people. So those are just sort of homespun principles for you to take away, and find somebody, if you really are not familiar with the way these things work, just get out there and find someone to help you and advise you.
So there we go. Some great takeaways that have come from our conversation today. It leads me to, firstly, a huge thank you to Professor Alan Barrell for sharing all your knowledge. Don't forget the book, if you do want to have a read. Loads of great content in there that you can access. Do connect with us. Alan and myself are both on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out and connect, build your relationships, then please do that. We'd welcome that, because I'm a great believer, as we've already spoken about throughout this hour, relationships are the key to success. The relationships you build today will be your success tomorrow. They're not necessarily talking about success, but just building out the people that can support you, the people you can support as well. It's been a pleasure hosting today. Thank you for everybody joining us. I am sure now in China, it's probably gone midnight. In Latvia, it's coming up to tea time. In the UK here, where Alan and I are, we're reaching kind of that afternoon high tea time. But thank you wherever you are joining us. We are back next month. We've got some more great conversations, so do look out for what's taking place next month. The date, if I remember rightly, let me just quickly check it, because I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was the 14th or something like that. Let me just have a look. We will circulate this, so you'll be able to book into it. It's the 19th, February the 19th, same kickoff time, 2:00 UK time. And we have a very, again, award-winning Connor Flashman-Wells joining us here in the studio, where we'll be talking all things around environment and stuff like that. So going to be another brilliant conversation. Once again, Alan, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon, a great evening, or a fantastic morning, and we'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.